Look at that. Good morning, Mike Kirschman, and welcome to Talking Niagara this morning with myself and Dave Wheeler. Good morning, Dave. How are you? Dave?
Oh, pretty good. Pretty good. Yes,
Weird.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I did. I could hear you. It's just that what happened, it was weird. I said, Good morning, Dave, and then there was a blip, a second of
Oh,
silence, and then you moved. It was kind of weird when that happens, right? One day we'll have
well, here I am.
Yeah, one day we'll have terabit internet and we'll wonder what all the fuss was about. You know? So anyway. Okay, so how's things with you this morning? Toastmasters yesterday, yes?
Yes, it was. We had a little bit of a celebration. Our champion brought in a cake and some non-alcoholic sort of champagne, and so we had a celebration at halftime. We had a nice little chat, and we were very much buoyed by the fact that our champ is being champ again, and we're getting ready. We're all getting set to go to the World Championships because we figure she will be able to win District 86. And if she wins District 86, that gives her another chance to get into the Worlds.
Yeah.
So we're happy about that.
Yeah. And she's happy, I bet as well.
Oh, yeah. She's very, 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 very happy about this. She's worked really hard on it. Like I was talking to her on the phone yesterday because I'm kind of her coach, and well, I am her coach basically. We discussed her speeches constantly and tweak this and tweak that, and right now she's got a real winner. And yet, even yesterday, I was able to give her a few pointers. I think that would strengthen her speech, and I think you know it'll be real good competition coming forward. I think that District 86 is hers again, hers to lose basically, and uh, and I'm looking forward to going to the World Contest because this is something I wouldn't miss.
Yeah. We actually, many years ago, when I was a member of Honeymoon City Toastmasters, there was actually a world champion who came to Honeymoon City one time. I don't know whether you were a member back then.
No.
Yeah. Is an Australian world champion. He was in a wheelchair.
Oh well, there you go. It doesn't matter what.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can speak. You
Yeah.
can speak. You know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
my biggest problem now is I have to submit designs for the Coach of the Year award trophy, which I feel should be at least 6 or 7 feet tall, with my name emblazoned on the front.
Talk about big-headed or what?
Uh, well, I did mention it to the district wheel, who is in charge of such things, and he just kind of looked at me. Some say with a look of disbelief, but I know it's different. I know he can recognize my talent, and we'll probably. It may cost a bit of money, you know. I'm thinking thousands of dollars, solid gold kind of thing. But
here's the size. Here's the size of the award that you'll get.
Well, that looks like a little microchip. So if it puts out a big image of a gigantic trophy, I suppose I can use that until I wait for the real one.
Yeah, deluded or what? Hey, Mike, and others, Anyway, we love it. We love it. Hey, you got to have a bit of fun here sometimes, right?
Yep. Oh, did you
Right.
hear about? Hey, did you hear about that dentist? There's a
Dentist?
dentist. The dentist, the local dentist, has been uh, has been charged with bootlegging. He's being a yeah, no kidding. A local dentist being charged with bootlegging, and I've gone to that. I've gone to that. I've seen that fellow for 12 years, and never once did I suspect that he was a dentist. That was the thing I was trying to tell on Friday.
Mm. Okay, so 75 entrepreneurs signed a letter of priorities for Ford's first 100 days. I actually applaud this, whether I agree with the priorities or not. I actually think it's a good idea. People of all walks of life should do this type of thing.
Well, this is very interesting uh, because what they've pointed out here and what they're forced to point out is that Ontario has had no economic strategy.
Yeah,
And we might be misinformed to think that it is a war strategy. It's like when your country converts itself to a war economy. When I first read that, I thought, well, we're trying to the Ontario government and those players in the Ontario economy want to convert Ontario's economy into a war economy. That's not exactly it. It The vulnerabilities of the Ontario economy have become very glaring of late. But this is something that these CEOs, these 100 CEOs that have drafted this letter to the Ontario government, have insisted that we have not had an Ontario strategy where Ontario resources are sourced by an Ontario manufacturing. It covers everything: agriculture, industry, mining, the works. So this is
it makes sense. It makes sense. It makes a great deal of sense.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of silver linings in all this Trump stuff. It is a total war now because Trump has called for 25% tariff on cars. And this might take a while because they're going to try to dissect what in the car is American and what is not. And the 25% will be applied to those parts of the car that are not American. It's very, very complicated process.
Yeah, right. So it's going to be a very complicated process. So, in fact, actually, what will happen is the price of the car will go up by 8.9% or something.
It may. Like, for instance, like if you take something like aluminum, and it's 25% more when it goes down there, goes down in the United States to make an auto part, let's say, then that aluminum part, then it goes into the car, would not make a big difference on the car's price overall. But if that aluminum part then goes to the States, goes to the Canadian plant, and a piston or something's made out of it, and it goes back and forth a few times, that then will increase the tariff on that particular part. So it seems to me that it's a complicated process. But this business about the CEOs are trying to sort of nip that kind of thing in the bud by prioritizing Ontario's economy and a firm strategy for Ontario.
Well, whatever that position is, I do agree that I think we've had a weak economic outlook. I'm not so sure that any of our governments. Certainly, it's true that the Win McGuinty government had no economic, had kind of very little economic guidance. Didn't have an economic policy at all.
No, they were working on a wholly different view of the world. The world had NAFTA, according to Ontario. The world had NAFTA, so it was going to rely on NAFTA. Right now, it has the USMCA, which was supposed to be the thing that determined and made the rules, and it did. It's just Trump sort of backstabbed us on that. It was his deal, and he doesn't like it anymore. So the trade war is bringing this out that we should have an Ontario-focused economy that gives preferential treatment. It looks as if to other Ontario economy, economy production of or resource production. It says it's in healthcare, agriculture, and critical minerals, high IP manufacturing, and cyber technologies. There's no cohesive strategy to turn Ontario's raw materials, ideas, and data into sustained economic strength, the letter reads. Ontario must adapt with a strategy that prioritizes homegrown innovation as a core policy.
100%. 100%. Yeah.
I'll draw an analogy to Nazi Germany. Basically, when Nazi Germany went to war, it did not have a war economy. It quickly found itself all bound up in a whole pile of issues that it hadn't understood or hadn't prepared for, and that one guy who wrote the book Blood and Iron, I forget. He was an architect that became the sort of the czar, the manufacturing czar of Nazi Germany, and converted the Nazi Germany economy into a war economy. And he himself may have extended the war by 2 years by the implementation of his policies, which made the German economy much more efficient.
Yeah,
that's sort of that's the only thing I can think of, because that's my only experience in reading about something like this. That you can do that. You can centralize and prioritize certain things and make it much more efficient.
Yeah,
and I think Ontario could do that as well. Whether just a willy-nilly free trade thing that's been going on without a real microscope on the vulnerability of Ontario.
Yeah. Okay. And Mike is saying that if you get elected without doing a costing, it's like we're giving him an unsigned check, and he's basically saying that Doug Ford got elected without doing any of that type of stuff, right? And it's we didn't have an economic plan put in front of us, and that is a part of the challenge I think we've got.
Well, we've never had one. And if you read the letter, the implication is we've never had such a thing before, where Ontario economy is prioritized by the Ontario government's economic plan. So that we've been really comfortable with this idea of the NAFTA thing. And when I've read about rolling back the NAFTA to the days where we were discussing it, the main opposition to NAFTA in Canada was that we would then become much more vulnerable to the U.S.'s whims, economic whims. The prediction was back then that the United States, once becoming totally reliant on the U.S. as we have had, that we would become vulnerable to anything like what has just happened. So those warnings that were put out there in the late 80s are coming true. We cannot, if we get to the point where we cannot trust the United States to keep to their trade agreements like the USMCA, the Trump agreement, then we are going to be in real trouble. And that's exactly what's happened at this particular point.
And exactly the point with many people who are saying, like me, is saying, it's time we've got to build new markets.
Well, yeah, that's going to take time. It's going to take a lot of time, but
it's going to take time. But the first step starts now.
Well, yeah, and it has been already taken. Right now, we don't know. According to this article, this is a prioritization that these executives have told have asked the Ontario Premier, or well, Ontario government to implement within the first 100 days of his current electoral status. And he's just won the election. Within 100 days of winning that election, we have to have a plan, they say.
Yeah.
And that plan will have to prioritize on the Ontario economy and organize it so that Ontario has a cohesive, strong economy that's less reliant on other factors.
Yeah.
Now, not being an economist, not being a CEO, you know, I don't know how this will work out, but it makes sense, quite a bit of sense, actually. Now, how that would interfere with interprovincial trade is another thing. If you start to prioritize your own Ontario economy, will that then be adjustable to an interprovincial trade?
Yeah, but again, I think what you've got to do is that's not when you're developing an economic strategy. That's not to say, for example, you might get a component part you might need to manufacture whatever it is you're manufacturing. A component part might come from another country. What you've got to do is you've got to look at it and say, okay, we currently get this from X, wherever we get it from, right? Are there better sources? Are there other people that that could we manufacture it in Ontario? First question. All right. If we could, how much is it going to cost us? Is that going to be economically viable? If we're going to manufacture it abroad, what's the best place to get it from? Is it where we currently get it? Or is there another country or is another location that means that we're going to get it better? So at the end of the day, once you've done that analysis, you can say that, hey, this particular part might well be best coming from Germany, or or this particular part might be best coming from New Zealand. And it's all a matter of analysis and understanding about what the market brings, what the products offer to us.
Well, you could take a thing like, let's say we have a lot of nickel. Let's say that's being pointed out. We send U.S. requires 50% of our nickel that we produce here in Ontario. So instead of just taking that raw nickel and sending it to the United States to be semi-refined and then further refined, we have mills here that could, smelters that could take that ore and semi-refine it to a mid-state in between, like they do with iron ore. Like iron ore comes out of the ground and then it's semi-processed, because the iron ore that goes into a blast furnace in Hamilton or Nanticoke are pellets of rough iron. So it is already being partly refined before it goes into the blast.
Yeah, because what you've done is blasted it out of the rock that it comes in, or melted it out of the rock that it comes into some form of semi-usable state.
Yeah, much more. It's not refined, but
instead of being 80% rock and 20% iron ore, it's now 80% iron ore and 20% rock.
Yeah. So what I assume that they mean, so we get the nickel and we send the raw nickel down there.
Yeah.
For no, I would say that we would take, let's say we take the ore and semi-refine it and then send it. That would add more of the process here in Ontario. I know I don't know if we smelt it in nickel. I don't know if we smelt the nickel here and then send it as smelted as nickel sheet or whatever we do down there, or we do the semi process, whatever. There's all kinds of things you could do. Agricultural produce that will be going to a bakery. So don't just send the flour or the grain down there. Produce the flour, and then send the flour down there. The kind of thing. Now this is all just guesswork on my part, but though that I would think would be kind of the thing they're looking for is something to add value to the products we
It's add
send.
value to the product that we make here in Ontario. Okay, so Mike asked the question: have they torn down tariffs yet? No, the answer is no. And but I do expect that after the federal election, that's probably going to become a priority.
Well, if Carney wins, he says that's going to happen by July 1st.
Yeah.
We do have the provinces are very, very willing to do that already. They can see the advantage of it. And we've just been damn lazy. We want to protect our own little provincial fiefdoms from other provinces, but we don't care how much we trade with the U.S. It's another warning that came from the NAFTA time back then that each different area of Canada would become reliant on markets in the States.
Yeah.
Which would make it much more easy to divide and conquer Canada economically, which is exactly what is happening now.
Yeah. Okay. The other thing is the original auto pack was 50% made in Canada, is sold in Canada. That's the way to go, I think, with this, says Mike.
You know what? I have no insights in this at all because through NAFTA and then later through USMCA, all the companies, and mostly American companies, have used those rules to adjust where they're going to make things and how they're going to make them to the most efficient way they can. So they'll take advantage of cheap labor in Mexico, they'll take advantage of ample resources in Canada, and they'll adjust their industry that way. They have a very efficient cross-border system that makes a car or anything else really quick. So you'll take a company, let's say that was in Maine, for instance, might move its operations to Quebec and part of its operations to Mexico, and have some of its operations in Maine itself. This is what the company sees. This is the company's looking for efficiencies, and it's using the rules of NAFTA for that. And USMCA,
Yeah.
and those USMCA rules were deliberately made and intended to make globalization and free movement of products to reduce the cost of products to the consumer. Now there's a whole monkey wrench thrown into the gears now.
Yeah. Okay. In relation to this, of course, is Bradely is saying Niagara can thrive despite the difficult trade conditions.
Yeah, Bradely points out that we have friends on the U.S. side, and he is saying that this is going to be painful, but the region's economy has been doing fairly well, and they have been talking with our cross-border partners in Niagara Falls, New York, and Buffalo, and of course we have dependent economies, just border economies, that are very, very important to both sides. Like the U.S. tourists coming here, and all of us going down to the U.S. Tourists, like we go to Ellicottville to go skiing, or whether we go to a Sabres game or a Bandits game, whether we there's theater.
Well, some of these things you do, kind of the closest store, it depends where you live, but sometimes the closest store or the closest supplier for something might well be 2 miles across the border, right? Than driving to Hamilton.
We got to remember too, this is also very important to point out that we have a lot of friends in the United States. We have a lot of friends
and relatives.
Yeah, well, I'm talking about economic friends in the United States. We have a lot of support. We find that both of the mayors of Buffalo and Niagara Falls, New York, pointed out all this tension is due to one man. The average American is not really interested in making trouble between Canada and the United States.
Yeah.
So people in the border regions are very well much more educated on the cross-border economic ties and how they benefit both countries. where this seems to be lacking in other parts of the United States where that's not immediately representative. So the border mayors, the border people, we have good connections between our friends just across the river there. Find all of this very appalling because they want to make sure that this is not American versus Canadian. It is Donald Trump against the world.
Interesting you should say about the local impact. There's I time remember going to a store in the US, just in the Buffalo area, and I was looking at some of the products there, and some of the products I recognized them from here in Canada, and and I did look, and they were Canadian made. But the funny thing was that they were, at the time that I was looking, cheaper in the US store than they were in the Canadian store.
Oh, they're always cheaper there. And in fact, I remember going to Tops, and one of the things I would buy is a certain kind of cracker that's a very plain cracker that I I was partial to. And that cracker was made in Mississauga, and it was about 60% of the price as if I bought it on the Canadian side. So I go to Tops and buy these things at full price, not even on sale, and they would be 60% of the price of the same cracker made in the same place.
The irony here is that, and the irony here is that probably today you're going to end up paying the same price for it.
I don't know, but there's something that we should be warning our listenership, if they have friends and family over there in the United States, if they try to bring something back, the border officials on the Canadian side are playing hardball. If you should go over there and get a dozen beer or something, or a few groceries or a shirt or something, if it was a small amount of money, they weren't going to do much about it. They just wave you through. Not now. You buy a T-shirt, you're going to have to pay duty on it.
Yeah,
they're going to make you pay duty on everything. So if you buy, let's say you go over there and you find a good baseball mitt for your kids, right? And it's like, $50 is cheaper than the one you could buy here. But once it comes over the border, the duty will be put on it, make it more expensive than the one here. And other times they would have just sort of waved you through on some minor purchase like that. And that's not happening now, I'm told.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't gone across the border, but I would believe that to be the case. One of the thoughts, though, I had about this Bradely speech is I was doing some research about this, and it seems like he used the same words similar words about a year ago, saying that Niagara will continue to rely on its resilience, its creativity, and compassion to navigate the road ahead and emerge stronger. It seemed like the same words he used this time.
Well, he's a politician, If you look at the speeches of Winston Churchill, you'll find a lot of similarities between one and the other. A lot. You'll find a lot of phrases taken out. He would do a speech. He may have made a speech in the year 1900 in South Africa, and you'll find elements of that speech recreated during wartime. So whatever works. And I think probably he would probably just do that. Bradely wants us to see that there's new investment in Niagara in 2024, totaling $1.71 billion, which created 590 jobs, while there was 11% growth in tourism spending over the previous year to $3.4 billion. He also mentions in here the positive contribution to our agricultural sector, which employs up to 24,000 people, I think it said here. So, which is always very good for us to always remember that we do have a strong agricultural aspect of our economy. We've mentioned that here several times. So, what he's doing basically, he's saying we're just trying to talk to our friends directly across the border. What are we going to do about this situation? How then do we adjust the economy here? And look at the positive parts of this economy, as well as being fearful of what's coming.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's move on from that one. Carney is basically saying Trump's auto tariffs are a direct attack on Canada.
Yes, it is. I think it's very, very clear that national defense, national security has nothing to do with an automobile, nothing at all. He can make the argument that steel and aluminum has defense security issues, which really doesn't
And
make which really doesn't.
I
Yeah,
don't think
he can make that argument. Now, that's the one he has made, and you
I
could make you could see where that has substance, except for the fact that he can get as much aluminum or steel from Canada as he wants at any time, war, peace, or other. Who are we going to sell it to? If they ask us, look, we're at war. If they're at war, we're going to be probably at war. But if they're going to be producing weapons and things that require a lot of steel, is Canada going to refuse them that steel? Never. Is Canada going to refuse them that aluminum? Never. And so it's a bogus claim.
Yeah, it is.
It's
It
like
is a bogus claim. Yeah.
just like the fentanyl and migration and all that other stuff.
We may have had our, I think we have to raise our hands and say, yeah, we've had border issues, right? And I think most people in Canada would kind of agree that we've had border issues. But it's also true that since Trump has been, in fact, probably since last November when the election occurred, the tightening up of the Canadian-American border has been massive.
Yes,
right?
it has. So that's no longer an issue. And of course, you find that the Trump administration is focusing away from that now. That now it's more on security issues. We need this for security. I feel that that there's going to be some sort of false flag opportunity that the U.S. will create to take Greenland fairly soon. Whatever Trump is doing, he wants to do it very quickly. Whatever situation he wants to create, he wants to do it in a very short order of time. That's why he's being so aggressive. And I think he'll use some sort of false flag opportunity to send troops into Greenland and take it, and then announce an annexation without asking the people of Greenland. I think those are his plans, whether they'll materialize or not. I think he's also working a divide and conquer strategy. He's going to, let's say he takes, he'll buy aluminum from Brazil for with no tariffs on it, and put tariffs on Canadian aluminum just so that it would weaken our economy even more. He's going to talk to Alberta, as we found out that Danielle Smith is going down there to talk to far right influencers like Ben Shapiro at some sort of fundraiser down in Florida. She thinks if she talks to the arch conservatives down there, that she may be able to get some sort of compassion or understanding. I think she's going to come back from Florida with a piece of paper like Chamberlain saying peace in our time. But what Trump's going to do is start to separate pieces of Canada away from other pieces of Canada. It'll give trade concessions to Alberta, and then ramp them up on Quebec, so that the country itself is divided. So we can't have a united effort against them. They'll give preferential treatment to Alberta and not to Quebec or that kind of thing.
Well, and actually, Danielle Smith, while we're talking about this, has faced a lot of criticism nationwide about her stance, and she's fighting back because she was saying, "I'm not going to be silenced about this."
Yeah, I can understand what she's trying to do. Of course, her job is to defend the jobs in the economy of Alberta.
Yeah.
And already as she's gone down there to talk to Mr. Wonderful, who thinks he knows what Trump is doing, Kevin O'Leary, Mr. Wonderful thinks he knows what Trump is all about. He says, look past all the bombast and you'll find the real intent there. He doesn't. He doesn't know anything. He thinks he does, in my view. And so Danielle Smith is going down there to talk to right-wing influencers to see if she can talk sense into them and get some sort of talk exactly to the supporters of Trump, which he doesn't realize that Trump doesn't care what they think, right? This is not election time. He doesn't have to care what they think one bit. Ben Shapiro is against the tariffs the last time I seen him talk. And I don't listen to him very often because he just goes off like.
Well, one of the things that Danielle Smith was talking about was that that Trump should hold off on the tariffs in order to assist the election of Pierre Poilievre.
I'm not so sure that that's what you really intended, but what you did say is you are motivating by the tariffs. You're motivating the Canadian electorate to make decisions out of fear rather than wait until the government is in place where remove those tariffs so that everything can calm down here. What she's saying is the American tariffs are unduly affecting the election, and she's true on that. But
I understand her view. Whether I agree with it or not is another question. But I understand the view. I haven't come to a decision on it.
No, and her whole point is, let me go down there, let me negotiate, let me talk to the pundits down there, let me make my case, that kind of thing. And I think she's going to find that the same thing that Ford did when he went down to Washington. When Ford went down to Washington and talked to Lutnick says, don't worry, there'll be no surprises. And then suddenly this 25% tariff is announced out of the blue. So there wasn't supposed to be any surprises. There were supposed to be lead up. There was none. So Lutnick just lied. And what she's going to do is she's going to find the same thing. That she's going to get some sort of hollow assurances, some sort of yes, we understand, we're working on that, and we know what your argument is, and don't worry. And then she's going to get blindsided. But I feel that Trump is going to pick apart things. He's going to put tariffs on one country and not the other to weaken a country. For instance, he'll load up tariffs on Canada, but other suppliers he'll drop the tariffs, so that if everybody had a 25% aluminum tariff on them, that would be fine. We're all still playing in the same ballpark. But if Trump decides to weaken the Canadian economy, he'll put a 50% tariff on Canadian aluminum and make the aluminum coming from Iceland for free of tariffs in order to weaken our aluminum export market. So he's got a lot of the cards, but whatever he's trying to do, he's trying to change the world order quite a bit. And I think he thinks he has a limited time to do that. And he's going to do it aggressively and quick. And he's going to play these games. Now, the caveat, of course, the risk he's taking, he could damage the U.S. economy so much that he'll have to turn away from that. He'll get a lot of backlash. But he's got his mandate, just had his mandate, and he's got 4 years to play with it, 8 years if you ask some other people. So we'll see what he does. He's definitely changing the world order, saying, China, you get this much of the world. Russia, you get this much of the world. Canada, and we're going to get this much of the world. We're going to be taking Greenland, and we're going to be taking Canada, and we're going to be taking the Panama Canal. And you guys, Russia, you don't say anything. China, you take Taiwan, that kind of thing. So we'll see. We'll see how far he can get. The the Carney approach so far is not to have bent the knee or kissed the ring, as all the other leaders have done.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we'll see how that does. Now Smith is very happy to go down there to bend the knee and kiss the ring. For now, we'll see if she gets the results she thinks she's going to get. I don't think so. I think she's going to come back with a piece of paper like Chamberlain did when he came back from Berlin. Peace in our time. And she's going to say, oh, reduce tariffs in our time. But we'll see about that.
Yeah. And you see, at the end of the day, I still kind of, I know it's not an ultimate measure, but it does measure something. The Dow, the NASDAQ, the S&P 500 are still going down.
Yes, and particularly car prices. But if you look at a place like Alberta, and I can see a Danielle Smith saying, well, we give them 60% of the oil that they can't produce on their own, but there's other suppliers. Let's say Trump wants to get in good with Saudi Arabia, which I think supplies about 6 to 10% of the crude oil. So they can say, well, you know what? Let's double or triple the amount we get out of Saudi Arabia, tariff-free, and put the tariff on the Canadian oil. So obviously the refiners are going to buy the stuff that's coming from Saudi Arabia tariff-free rather than the stuff coming from Canada, which has a tariff on it. So there are so many different oil exporters out there, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, and others, that in Nigeria, that the U.S. can get all the oil needs from other sources other than Canada.
Yeah.
So Trump can say no tariff on Saudi oil, but lots of tariff on Canadian oil. So the refiners will buy the Saudi oil, and that will cripple our oil industry. So I think she sees that. And of course, that's frightening to her and, of course, her province.
But because of her province's dependence upon oil and, production of oil-related things.
And now we can see the short-sightedness of the Liberal government for the last 10 years of resisting the expansion of oil and the production of LNG, liquefied natural gas. We would have had a huge market for liquefied natural gas if we got our act together, but the policies of the Liberal government prior to this was very much environmentally focused. So they felt that they were the responsible ones, blah, 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 blah. And guess what's happened? Now we need that money that comes from those resources, and we need those alternate markets that we could have had but don't have now.
Yeah. And that's a part of the problem that I think we face is that, this whole question has not been universally handled properly, certainly by the Canadians.
Yes, she is, and this is the tactic I believe the Trump administration will use is preferential treatment of sources of imports. So they'll give preferential treatment to Alberta, and that will look pretty good to Alberta, and then they'll invite Alberta to join the U.S. But in any case, before even that happens, giving preferential treatment to parts of the Canadian economy to divide one province against the other is one of the attacks, and also country to country. For instance, it may, if it gets stuff from Brazil that it also gets from Canada, it will will reduce the tariff on the stuff from Brazil so that they can attack the Canadian economy by putting tariffs on that.
Yeah, okay. There's one sort of thing that, hey, Trump is learning an old lesson from the British Empire. All right, and it's divide and conquer.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it worked for them, and it worked for Julius Caesar, who famously said, divide and conquer, who conquered the whole area of what is now France, used to be called Gaul, and he did that quite effectively. He would take one tribe, use their traditional angst against another tribe, and take that tribe to help him fight the other tribe, and then turn his back on that other tribe. So we'll see. I believe that in short order they're going to try some sort of game in Greenland, because Trump has to continue to have successes. By changing the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, somehow he thinks that's some sort of victory. But he needs those victories. As anyone like that who's trying to change the world order needs a set of victories, and Greenland will be the easiest one, I'm sure. Possibly Panama.
I don't. I think Panama might be easier than Greenland, to be quite honest.
Well, there's a big military base in Greenland right now, and U.S. military base. And from that point there, it would take seconds to take over Greenland. A big shock and awe with a bunch of bombs dropping on there.
Again, they yes, they could physically take over Greenland in next to no time, but the implications of doing it are far more widespread.
I don't think Trump really worries about that right now. He's looking for a victory. He's looking for he's looking for himself to look as if he is a conqueror, basically. That he's a strong man that's looking out for the interest of the United States by expanding its territory, annexing certain lands, as they did in the middle of the U.S. history. They just kind of annexed lands that belonged to Mexico, that kind of thing. And unfortunately, there's a lot of American wannabes in Canada. They think the sparkle of becoming American is going to be a good thing. I don't think so.
Yeah. Okay, so moving on, nominees have been announced for the return of the Niagara Music Awards.
Yeah, I put this in kind of like with all the tension going on out there with trade, and that's top of mind to us. But we should also listen to things that are kind of positive. Now, the Niagara Music Awards are starting again.
They took a big break being away for COVID, didn't they?
Yeah, and we find a lot of these places, a lot of these groups that have got together, like even in Toastmasters for a long time, even on our contests, we were having video contests. We never collected together in groups, big groups. Well, now the conventions, the conventions that we used to have are starting again, and this here is the same. The Niagara, they now feel safe enough that they can have bring these all back together, because they're stopped during COVID, and it takes a long time for these things to be organized. And there's been a very, very cautious attempt to make sure that these things don't start again while there still might be a threat of COVID or other transmissions of diseases.
I think we've been overcautious. We've been. I get it. Even in 23, 24, we should have been back to normal.
It could have been, but except that it takes time to reignite something like that. Once it's stopped, the organization has to start all over again.
Yeah, I get it. It's a good thing. This is the 14th edition, I believe, of the Niagara Music Awards.
Yeah, so it's very good. It's very, very good news, actually, that local musicians, and here's a quote: "Local musicians are a group of incredible and genuine people. They pour their passion into their art and share that message on a daily basis with the world. That takes an incredible amount of bravery." As part of this year's show, all ticket holders to Red Carpet Gala will also be admitted into Stefan Machio's show at the Niagara Falls View Casino Resort, Avalon Theater, April 11th. So that's the enticement there. and it says here, not only was funding an issue, but it was discovered that several submissions were sent by bots on behalf of artists who weren't from Niagara. Some of them he had it. So there's another glitch in the system there, that bots were submitting non-Niagara musicians to become nominated. So they had to sort that out.
Yeah, but again, if I were to be a nominee and it weren't a bot, I could nominate somebody, and I didn't quite understand the rules. I could nominate somebody that wasn't from Niagara. It's up to the committee to actually, limit the list.
Well, yeah, and they find that sorting out what's a bot and what isn't is more difficult, because the bot, of course, can accumulate a lot of fallacious information. Dave Wheeler from Sudbury, basically, of the bot finds him an address in Niagara Falls and puts him in there and makes him a nominee, and the people who are running the organization sees, okay, here's Dave Wheeler, but they don't know he's from Sudbury. It looks like he's from O'Neill Street, but he isn't. So that sort of thing has to be sorted out. So obviously, anyone who wants to get their musical chops out there and become noticed might cheat to get in.
The other thing, of course, is that presumably they've got to be active artists.
Well, yeah, and so there is a process.
Yeah.
There's a process. We would find a lot of the people who know the local artists quite well. I went to an event back in January. It was a local musician put it on, and in amongst that were other local musicians, small groups and singing quartets and so on, bands, single performers, and the featured guy. He's the guy that organized, or was part of the organization, him and another guy, but they're all local.
Yeah.
And it's really cool to go watch a lot of local, because there is a lot of talent here. There's a lot of talent here, and it gives them exposure. But if you have exposure for musicians, another musician might want to sneak in, because, of course, what do they want? Exposure. Yep. And if they get in, and if they get in, and it turns out they're not from Niagara, but they get the exposure, then it's a lot easier to ask for forgiveness than, do you see what I mean? Then permission.
I get. Okay, so what are the categories they got, Dave?
I don't know. What's it say in the article?
That's what I was asking you. I've gone to if you want to look at the thing.
A very short article. It doesn't get into much, really.
Well,
here they got the Niagara Music Awards nominees, adult contemporary artist. So they have Amanda Lynn Parker, Caleb Fast, Junior, just a guy called Junior, Catherine Sinopoli. There's a lot here. Album of the year.
And that's why I said
one of them is Preach My Soul by Spencer McKenzie, who I saw earlier in the wintertime. Who's a very good. There's blues artist. I'm not so sure why he isn't in the blues albums. He is in. He is in the Spencer McKenzie is in the blues artist too. These are the only ones I know. Country artists. There's country artists. There's EDM artists. There's female artist of the year, folk artist, heavy metal artist, hip hop artist, instrumental artist, male artistic of the year, music video of the year, new artist, new group, original artist, original group, original song, producer of the year, promoter of the year, punk artist, rock artist, venue of the year. So there's a lot of categories. Wow.
And the reason I asked the question was because I was promoting for a second the post that I put up here, which was the link to the site, Dave.
Oh, okay.
But thank you for bringing them up. In that look through the artists, did you come across any that you kind of would go, wow, they should be the outright leader?
Since I don't know most of these I've seen some of these bands and some of them. But the one I've seen the most is in this list here is Spencer McKenzie, who is extraordinarily good artist. He's normally blues based, but I saw him at the Moose and Goose or whatever it is in Thorold there, and he was performing there with a new young artist that he was kind of mentoring, and he can sing it all. He can sing blues or others, and he's a very good instrumentalist as well. So that's the one person that I see that I know, and Spencer McKenzie was nominated for a Juno Award for Best Blues Album. Anyway, the same one that's listed here, I think.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's good. That's good. So not just local success, but wider success.
Yeah. Remember, it's really hard to make it as a musician today based on your album or CD sales, because everything can be scooped off the net very easily. So artists depend on performances. So it is a very good time for us as individuals to get out there, to be able to go out and support local artists. We'll find that they have a lot more appeal. Whereas the music industry and the bands, the big bands, we focused on them, the worldwide talents that have broken through into the worldwide market. We focus on them, but now we can focus more locally, which is a thing we should train ourselves to do.
Well, I have to wonder whether, one of the things, categories that's not on this list is music venues.
You want the different?
Yeah, I'm just saying, hey, what's important very often is not about, it's not just the individuals who are playing, but where they play, where you can go listen to good music.
Well, one of the most important ones of these days have been places like the one right there on Queen Street. What the heck's it called? It's lost my mind.
You mean the one by Taps?
That is Taps, yeah.
Yeah, Taps.
Taps has been pretty good that way. There are little bars in St. Catharines and Niagara Falls that will hire local talent from time to time, and even places like the Legion will take on players. What we have to do is basically, as a region, we have to get their names out there more, so that and familiarize ourselves with our own artists, so we can go out and support them.
Yeah, I think the venues are as important as the artists.
Yeah,
having a good venue is vital. The Taps is nice, but it's I kind of find it's about the only one I really know of. I know there are others.
Ivan's Bar will take on some. The Legion will sometimes take on.
Well, the Chippewa Legion, sorry, not Legion, Chippewa Lions Club has got bands as well.
Yeah, I think the main thing here is to familiarize ourselves with that, and to encourage local people to go out and have a night of entertainment with local artists.
Yeah.
Rather than go over to Buffalo or up to Toronto or Hamilton to see a world famous artist, to go to your local bar or local venue and then support the local artist, because you're going to get as entertained by local talent. There are only a small fraction of artists make it into the big time. There are different tiers of success with artists. They have followings, even the secondary, third level. People have certain followings in local areas. I was in the States one time, and I was in a place where there was a female singer in her band, and it's super popular locally. She filled up every venue she ever went to in and around that place in around New York and in New England and that kind of an area. And then but she was largely I never heard of her, but in that area everybody knew her, and she
Yeah.
put on a great show. I was there one night with a friend of mine. She put on a great show. It was as good as any entertainment I've ever seen anywhere. I've gone to the Trelf, and Joanne O'Connor, I think her name is, was a guitar player like no other I've seen. She's a big, big Irish looking woman, and she could play the electric guitar like lightning on her fingers. And she was probably one of the best guitar players I've ever seen. And yet, outside of people that actually know who she is, she isn't world famous or anything. So there is a lot of very, very good talent out there.
Yeah.
And we feel that just because they haven't cracked the international market, they might not be as good. They're as every bit as good.
Oh, I'm not. I would never go and say that sort of thing. All right. Many, when you think about it, how many international artists have we had coming out of the Niagara region? We've had quite a few, right?
Yeah.
Or people that have been part of bands that have become, internationally famous.
And they need your support. And let's put it this way: to have that interaction between artist and audience is really good for the artist, and it's really good for the audience.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Now I don't know the gentleman's name, but I remember seeing a couple of years ago there was this kid who was playing at the what do you call it? Hard Rock Cafe down in Falls Avenue, and he was absolutely stunning, right? Absolutely superb artist, and he was basically the reason he was there, and he was doing it several weeks in a row. He was actually trying to get money for his college, going to college, funding his college through his music.
Well, I tell you, look at when Leonard Cohen was going around with his tour group of musicians. He picked superb musicians to be with him, and not one of those musicians that I knew, not one, and yet they were some of the best players I've ever seen, and they like it really enhanced Cohen's lyrics and things like that. Their musicality was superb. So that gives you an idea of, and any individual one of those artists on that stage with them, or unknown to the average person, they could be playing in your local bar or venue, and you would get as entertained as you would by going to see a big named artist, because the talent is still there.
Yeah.
It's like going to watch a hockey, like, you know what I mean? Yeah. Anyway, I'll let that go. But that's just the positive part of the story here, is that is starting up again, and I think that that it's time for local people to
get out. Get out, support local artists, go to local venues, and enjoy yourself, because there's a lot of good people out there.
Let's face it, it's not going to cost you an arm and a leg either.
Yeah. And I don't know, of the list of nominees here, I probably know only about 4 or 5. I've heard of about 4 or 5. Can't say I know them, but that's fine.
You could actually, I think someone you might want to contact about this is Phil Lococo and Lori Lococo, because anytime I've a lot of times when I've gone to see a local artist, I'll see that Lori or Phil are in there, and I think Phil knows quite a bit about local artists.
Well, he does a lot of he does a lot of that kind of work. He builds event stuff for people, and artists and events go well together anyway, right?
Yeah, and then of course the Rick Rose Foundation they are trying to help local musicians, aren't they?
Yeah, again, exactly that, right? Exactly the type of people that this is what this is built for, right? And Niagara Music Awards. Yep, go look the website up, niagaramusicawards.ca, and /nominees is if you want to see that. All right, and let's give kudos to them, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And okay, so that's
All right.
a bit of good news with all this harrowing. We are now deep in a trade war, and the salvos are going back and forth across the border and all around the world, and it is really upsetting to a lot of people, the anticipation of problems to come. But at the same
Yep.
time, life goes on, and our local artists are back being uh, rightfully being recognized by the music
Yep.
awards.
Yep. All right. And I think with that, we can kind of say goodbye.
Without further ado, I bid you adieu, everyone. Pray for peace.